You got this and you got that, and you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Only Friends podcast. It's Strat Chat Wednesday, and you know what that means. We got Matt Hunt in the building today. Going to be going over.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are y'all doing?
Oh, you know, I threw my
What's
back
poppin',
out.
Hunt?
You threw your back out. Yeah, I feel like it's not the same without Conrad, throwing it to me to start the episode.
You're right. It's better. It's much better.
I didn't want to
Calmer,
be the one to say it,
slightly
Where is he?
more boring.
He is in Canada. I don't think they're letting him back over the border.
Conrad's
Yep.
in Canada. Is Nikki in Canada too?
Nikki's
They
there.
went for a meetup game.
Landon's in Canada.
Landon's in a different part. Landon's in the
right.
upper left.
Yeah.
They're in the upper right.
Right.
They're worlds
But
apart.
for some
really.
reason, half of the company is in Canada right now. It's
Yeah.
very weird, but here we are, I guess.
I might join them, to be honest. Vancouver sounds nice right about now.
Don't pretend you're going to leave America. You don't leave America.
I mean, Canada is basically just America adjacent.
Well, okay. You don't leave North America.
Right.
It's America with free healthcare. I mean,
It's America with nicer people.
I might have to get this back issue checked out. Oh,
Canadian
man.
healthcare tourism.
Matt, have you traveled outside the U.S.? I
Me?
mean, like outside?
I've been to Australia, the Bahamas like a dozen times, and Canada probably a dozen times.
So you've
Okay,
never
so
been
not
anywhere that
Europe.
doesn't speak
Never
English.
been to Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, never been.
You've been to Montreal.
Montreal, yeah, but English is still
Yeah,
primary.
exactly. Like, so you've never been anywhere where you had to survive despite not being able to speak to the locals. Like,
No,
because even in Montreal, you can speak English to them.
Yeah, well, minus the Uber drivers, not a single fucking one of them speaks English, and it's shocking to me.
That's funny. It's probably a point of pride. If they're anything like
Right.
the French, like they will take pride in refusing to speak English.
honestly, that sounds amazing. You don't have to talk to an Uber driver.
You would think. No, they still talk.
Oh,
That's what's so confusing to me. Where it's like, you
Just
walk
having
in,
a full-blown conversation.
you like get in the Uber and you say like, yeah, I'm going to the Playground Casino, and they look at you and say something like in French that means no English, and I'm like, okay, cool. Quiet ride then, I guess. And then they just start going off about like who knows what. I can't understand what they're saying.
spend enough time there, you'll be speaking
They're
French.
just
No, it
venting
won't.
to you. They're just venting all their problems to you
They're
because they know you don't
like-
understand.
Yeah, they're probably calling me a motherfucker. I have no idea. I'm just like accepting it. It's like, yep.
That tracks.
Generally, when someone's insulting you in a foreign language, you usually know. Like usually, you're going to be able to get the vibe of I'm being insulted here.
Yeah, if they intend for you to know, but if they just do it with a smile on their face and keep their
That's
tone
true.
pretty even
The
kill.
The French are actually masters at that. I don't know about the Canadian French, but the
Right.
actual French, they're real masters of insulting you without really appearing like they're doing it.
Should have brought Hunt. You're fluent in French,
I
right?
am pretty fluent, yeah. Je parle couramment français.
I was I had Emma with me. She made sure I wasn't getting taken for a ride, literally. I don't know how you've been to foreign lands that you don't speak the language,
I've lived in like 11 different countries, so yeah.
but that you did. You're fluent in a bunch of languages, so
I'm fluent in 2 languages, English and French. I've
Okay.
lived in countries I've lived in where I don't speak the language. I mean, I speak a little bit of Russian, but Russia,
Spain, maybe?
Turkey, Spain, my Spanish is okay.
Yeah.
Czech Republic, Poland. I've lived in Mexico. That was how my Spanish got kind of okay.
were
yeah,
you in
bunch
any
of
of these
places.
places where literally you didn't understand a single word of their dialect?
Yeah, but I just learned quickly.
Oh,
Like
okay.
you just, I would never go somewhere and just accept that I don't know a single word.
Oh, that would be what I did.
Yeah, right. I would go like when I went to Prague, the Czech Republic, right?
Uh-huh.
There's a bunch of English speakers in Prague, but I made sure that I looked up like a few basic phrases in Czech so that I could ask where the bathroom was in a restaurant or
Right.
order food or say please and thank you or whatever. Like when you
feel like-
travel a lot, you just get used to that.
I feel like at this point the phones do a lot of the heavy lifting now.
They do now, but
'Cause
not
you
when
have,
I was
like,
traveling.
Google
Did you see
Translate.
the new Chat GPT that came out?
Well, what I did see was a TikToker or something. I don't actually have TikTok, but TikTok adjacent. So either a YouTube short or a reel. And it was a guy saying, "Ladies, you've been replaced." And he was having a full-blown like end-of-day conversation with ChatGPT where she was like, "Hi, Josh, how are you? How was your day?" And he goes, "I have some really exciting news." She goes, "I'd love to hear it. What happened?" And he's like, "I have an interview tomorrow with OpenAI. Have you heard about it?" And it makes a joke. It's like, "No, that's a stunning new company. What is it?" "I'm just kidding. Of course I've heard of OpenAI. Congratulations."
It's crazy, dude. I saw a video where it was like they had like the camera on, like, "Oh, can you describe this room?" And it's telling like everything that's in the background, and then a person came in, gave the person bunny ears behind them, and laughed and left. They're like, "Oh, I see someone came in and gave you bunny ears. That's funny, and you looked like you guys are having a playful day." And
yeah, part of this was like he turned the camera on himself and he said, "Do I am I dressed appropriately for this interview?" And it very like politely told him no. And then basically was like, maybe run your fingers through your hair and like, get yourself together. He goes, "How about this?" And he puts a bucket hat on, and she laughs at him and says, "Well, you'll stand out, but I don't think that's the look you're going for." It's wild. It's like, what the hell is going on?
He
Dude?
even said that he misplaced his glasses. He's like, "Do you remember the last place I had my glasses?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's next to your computer, next to an Apple."
Shut up.
we're only a couple years away
it's
from this
crazy,
being
man.
a completely different world than we live in right now.
The funny part was watching it didn't make me feel like, oh man, this is such a revolutionary invention. Like, what trouble we're gonna have for humans. Like, they're not gonna rely on each other for like the loneliness problem or anything. All I saw, I like immediately just got anxious. I'm like, oh my God, now I have to have this meaningless small talk bullshit conversation with a computer too?
Right. Yeah. Well, they were saying that like
Leave me alone.
Well, the great thing about it being a computer is you can just turn it off. You can just switch the AI off and not have to deal with it. You can't switch off a human who's annoying.
How
You
was
can
your
switch off
day,
an
Matt?
AI.
Fuck off. No one asked
I always
you.
feel like when I'm doing anything with ChatGPT, I always feel like I have to be polite to it, and then I forget it's not a human. It doesn't
Right.
care whether I say please.
That's
It's,
just,
like-
that's just the British manners.
it
in
is
you,
exactly.
you know? You
It's
understand.
crazy how ingrained in me it is.
Honestly, like that goes all the way back to me being a kid. I remember my grandparents would like pick me up from school in like 5th grade, and the typical conversation would always, "How was your day?" And this like cold chill would just come over my body of like, can we just not do this? Like, please, if you want to talk to me, like make it meaningful, but like I don't have time for that. I had a long day. Okay, lunch was cut by 15 minutes. They didn't cut the crust off my sandwich. Like, you don't want to hear about this shit, and I don't want to tell you about it. Let's move on. Nothing's changed.
yeah.
Not a goddamn thing. All right, we have a lot in store for today's show. We're going to be covering an interesting spot, three-handed in, I believe it was the 30K Triton event. 25K. Between Brewer and two others, where he had a chip behind and had a big decision. We're also going to be discussing how to properly manage your bankroll for the summer now that summer camp is upon us, how to properly shot take if that's something you're interested in, and everything that falls in line with that. But before we get to all that, there's some news and notes. First and foremost, friend of the show, friend of the company, former content creator. No, I shouldn't say former. He's made a couple courses for us, probably make some in the future as well. Nick Marchington put a tweet out yesterday. And he said, "A few months ago, I played a 12K pot at the Win where I called someone down all 3 streets correctly with 6-9, nice, on a board of ace, queen, 5, 7, jack. I just found out that they did a security investigation to determine if it was a cheat or angle occurred. Results came back, and I'm just a degenerate calling station." And I got to tell you, if ever there's a man after my own heart, it's Marchington right
Good
here.
on the Win for doing the security check, because they should.
Right.
I mean, what the hell's going on here with the 9-high,
Yeah,
12K pot?
Hey, we spent 3 months looking into a 250K pot with somebody calling down with jack high. Like,
Right.
let's fucking go.
We got to
You know?
get that hand history, man. Nick's got to provide that hand history.
right.
That's such a fun one. I want to hear it.
How did he get to the turn is my question.
My suspicion is either it's a blind against blind pot, or maybe
I thought that too.
or maybe the flop was just checked and the guy just like,
No, he said call down 3 streets.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the only thing I can think of is that one thing I'm certain of is he's in a blind. He's either in the big blind or the
he
small
has to
blind.
be.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm 99% sure, I'm saying this with a high degree of confidence, I think he had 6-9 suited. So I would estimate that he probably faced like a tiny bet on the flop in some capacity, whether it was blind versus blind or whatever.
Maybe he had a backdoor.
And he had a backdoor flush draw.
Yeah.
Like he had to have had a backdoor flush draw. It's the only thing that makes any
Maybe
sense.
he just had a flush draw. Maybe a front door flush draw. But he's leaving that part out.
But here's the other aspect of it, right? So like this is why I think it had to be blind on blind. What do you beat?
Right. This is what
You
I mean.
lose the 8-9,
This is
man.
what I mean.
Right.
At first, I was like, oh, maybe 7 deuce game, but there's a 7 on the board.
Right.
So like,
Right.
you lose.
And like you lose to better 9 high.
Right.
So it's like somehow you have to be against a position that could possess 8-6 and 3-4.
And 6-4 because
And
double barrel
6-4.
turn.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like it's either big blind button or it's blind versus blind.
yeah, or like,
Yeah.
you know, someone who's just so wide that they have the deuce 3 or something. I don't know.
Is Marchington a drinker?
No. Well, he's
Yeah,
British.
he could have like
British, it could be.
had a
Could
backdoor, turn the draw, and then like a lot of money. Like maybe he just called a big bet, and then like the river, the guy just bets like because we don't know what stakes they were playing, do we?
I would assume 10-20 or 20-40.
So like maybe by the river, like the guy just like does one of those like really small bet just to like get him to fold the exact hand that he has. And
I was gonna
say
say-
like a 10% bet, and he's just like, I've just paid it off.
Nobody's paying.
I
Nobody's
was
betting
going
10%
to say
in
I was going to
position.
say the opposite. I was going to say
maybe
that he might have paid off like a really big bet in a spot where he thought that like a lot of jack highs and 10 highs might just give up, and the only stuff,
Jack was the river, but yeah,
Oh,
like
right,
king,
but like a-
king
yeah,
high obviously
just-
isn't blasting.
right,
so
like
it's
right.
like
it would have to
Yeah.
be a spot where
it's just so sick when you lose
He's
the
like-
9-8,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Like
Just
when the
so
guy rolls
absurd.
over 9-8 and you have to tap the fucking. I've been in
Oh
this
my
spot
God.
before. Lamanna
you
knows
have.
it. I've called 10 high like a handful of times. I've called exactly 10-9 high like 4 or 5 times in my life, and there's definitely at least been one time where I've had to not with 10 high, but like in other spots where I called with high card and I had to tap the table because they had me pipped. And it's like, oh no. What have we, that's been more like tournament stuff though.
Yeah.
You make the hero call in a tournament, like you go, oh, that's good.
what do you think is the worst? I might have asked you this before. What's the worst hand you've called down with?
5-4 suited.
But like you fight like 5 high.
5 high. Yeah.
Called down with 5 high.
At Turning Stone in the 5-5-10 game.
Okay, what's the worst hand you've called down with and won?
I won.
With 5 high?
I won with 5 high. I beat 4-3.
Wow.
It was.
All right then. You can't really do better than that.
I've won with 5 high twice in my life. I won at Turning Stone with 5-4 suited, but I beat 4-3, and then I played a massive pot versus JRB. I think I've told this one before. I played it terribly, knowing what I know now, but this was like 2013, and it was a single raise multi-way pot. I defended out of the straddle with 5-4 of clubs. Or 5-4 suited in some regard. And I flopped a gut shot flush draw on like ace deuce 6. And I check call. Turn brings a backdoor flush draw. JRB fires again. I call again. And the river's just like a 10. So it's like it's like ace deuce 6, 7, 10. And I check river, like surrendering. Both flush draws missed. And like I just had I never took the lead in the hand. I may have like check raised flop and he 3-bet me somehow and I called. I don't recall because I don't remember off the top of my head if I had the front door or the back door. But in any way, I ended up here passively and I check. And I was known to be incredibly sticky. I'm still known, obviously, to be incredibly sticky.
Don't talk like you're not
Right.
not that
But
way
like,
anymore.
you know,
Obviously, even more sticky. It can't be any more sticky than
in
that.
like 2013, the trend was very much to bet, give up. And like the notion, like when theory first really became more mainstream, the notion of I'm at bottom, I have to bet was so foreign to live guys.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were just so accustomed to saying like, I have 5 high and this guy called me twice. Like, fuck me, I quit.
Yep.
And we just shut down. So that's exactly what happens in this pot. This pot ends up being like, 60K or something like that. I check river and JRB just goes, you got it. I check. And I was like, I don't think so. And I table 5 high and he stands up, hovers over the table in disbelief, looks at it, looks back at his hand and taps the table.
Wow.
Just
You
mucks
didn't
it.
call the river with 5 high though.
No. That
Well,
one went
okay.
check. The one at Turning Stone, I did call the river.
Okay.
I beat exactly 4-3, the one at Turning Stone.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, man. I just really think you have 4-3 here.
You just called and
I
win.
just fucking
Wow.
called him one.
That's amazing.
But that could never happen again.
I think I'm still waiting to call Jack high and win. I've called Queen high and won, but mostly in just like small tournament spots. I've never made like a huge hero down with Queen high and been right.
I called with King high in
the Colossus.
In the Colossus with like 3 tables left.
Yeah, that's a good call. I've bluffed Queen 10 high and got called on the river and like defeatedly showed my hand and then chopped. Like
that's a great feeling.
I've bluffed Queen high and gotten called by the same Queen high and chopped, which I don't know how that happened, but it happened.
It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that. But I've never made the big Jack high or 10 high or whatever call down. I'm looking forward to when that happens.
The last year that Partouche was still an event, I think it was
Partouche, wow.
2014 maybe. So a couple funny stories from this one. I wasn't there, but Dan O'Brien ended up getting like 2nd or 3rd, maybe 4th, something like that. It was one of his biggest scores. And at the time it was huge for him. And in the process of this, so first of all, I think it was like they slapped some sort of big guarantee on it. And as they were nearing the end of registration, it was like clear that they were going to overlay. And so I think that again, I could be fucking this story. So like if my details are wrong, please feel free to correct me. But I think that the people in charge were trying to finagle it somehow, like either adding a flight or extending registration, some sort of capacity so that they could reach the guarantee. Either that or like just omitting the guarantee altogether. And they got like infinite backlash. So the owner of the casino or the tour at the time or whatever, like got on the mic and said, "That's it. This will be the last time we ever run this event forever." And it was. So they just like shut it down for good. It was like one of the more popular EPT stops back in the day. But throughout the course of this event, I don't remember all the details again because it's secondhanded from Dan telling me. But as he was like running deep in the event, he said that there was a guy at his table who notoriously didn't want to show when he got called down on the end. And he noticed this time and time again, right? And the guy would just like often muck. But back then you had to show 2 to win. So the guy would muck, his hand would get killed, and the other player would show whatever. So the spot came up deep in the event where Dan had missed like an open ender with Queen 10 high. And he checked the river and the guy made some like non-size bet. And Dan tanked for a long time and was like, I think if I call and he's like bluffing with even a pair, he'll just muck. So he called him drawing to the muck. Guy mucks his hand and then Dan tables Queen high and he tries to like dive into the muck to retrieve it because he's bluffing with like King high or a pair or something along those lines. And obviously like it was too late then. So that was like one of the more epic high card call downs that I've heard.
That's
like
amazing.
Literally calling with the intention of I'm drawing to the muck here because like I never win with my hand.
That's great. I almost did the opposite of that and almost fucked myself the other week because I bluffed the river. No, I bluffed turn and gave up river on a 5 flush board, and the lowest card on the board was the 6. Or I don't know. I can't remember what it was, but it was like the lowest. The bottom of the flush was the 6, and my opponent showed a flush card, but it was a flush card that was low enough to not count.
Right.
So we were going to chop.
Yeah.
And I like went to muck my hand and was like, wait, no, we don't chop. Give me my hand back. And I managed to get my half of the pot because I hadn't actually fully mucked my hand. But like, I don't ever want to be the guy who mucks and then just sees my opponent show, a hand that doesn't actually have any showdown value.
Here's a fucked thing that's been happening. And I saw some TDs commenting on it that it's legit. Places that are forcing you to I'm not sure how consistent it is that this is a rule. I know it's more of a tournament thing than cash. Like I'm pretty sure cash you never have to show to win the pot, but I think in some places tournaments you do. Basically like what's happening or what has happened a few times is it goes like check river or check bet call river, and a guy says you're good and the other player says okay, muck your hand, and the guy pushes his hand to the muck. And then the person is forced to table to retrieve the pot, but they deem the card still retrievable for the other player, and he reaches into the muck, pulls it back, and shows better, which is like really, really fucked.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much of it is precluded on the dealer killing the card versus not, but I know that like it's not super common practice anymore when somebody mucks to actually like touch them on the muck to call them dead or whatever, and then show like they just whatever, they scoop it in, and then directors get to make some weird decision on the spot of like, oh, those 2 cards are still retrievable. Yeah, go ahead and pull them back.
I've always thought that instead of the muck being this poorly defined area, there should just be a line. If your cards are over that line, they're mucked.
Yeah,
and there was obviously
a lot of places do have betting lines, but it's really
but even they don't count as the muck.
It's a betting line. It's not a muck line.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I mean. Is
and not only that,
there should be a line for the muck.
I mean, obviously, like if it's a betting line, it should also count for a fold.
Well,
like folding is a part of betting.
A fold is different than a muck, though.
No.
Yes.
No. If your hand is folded, it's mucked.
No. That's why it could be retrievable. Like if you just fold your hand, but it's not in the muck, then they can turn it over. But if it's in the muck,
that's because they're not qualifying it as folded. If they're saying it's retrievable, what they're saying is that the action of passing your cards forward to the dealer is not technically a fold, right? Because the definition of fold.
There's a difference between a fold and a muck.
I mean, there might be
gonna have to ask Jill.
Yeah, there may be in the way that they're qualifying it, but like the definition of folding is surrendering.
Yeah,
right. You've surrendered your ability to win the pot.
Right.
So what I was gonna say is like they should also treat that as a folding line. But the issue is that it's way too fucking close to the players. You know what I mean? Like you should have to make like a very significant motion to cross it. And I think that's the issue, is that they keep it too close to the players, so a lot of places just won't enforce it. And they'll say it's a guideline. And the reason for that is like, oh, of course it's a guideline. My chips are fucking touching it the way I have them stacked.
Right.
How on earth are you ever going to enforce like me passing chips over or not or whatever?
Tables with a betting line that's further away from the players, to where if your chips cross that line, it is a bet. If they deliberately cross that line, it's a bet. Doesn't matter, like with that's what counts now. They should have a line that's like
there's
a hard line.
There's also like different places, different rules. Like if you grab a whole stack, you bring it out and then you cut, whatever stack you bring across the line is a bet.
Well, that's what I'm saying should happen. It's just the line should be further forward.
Like so, if I
agree with Hunt. Yeah.
Okay, so if I took like a stack of 20 and then just cut out like half of it.
If there's a line,
right? That's what I mean.
Because you really have to, like you could just do that behind the line.
I think the line should be far enough away that there's a difference between the movement you make to cut out a stack versus the movement you make to put them in the pot.
Precisely, and I think currently betting lines, like you have to kind of keep your hands like T-Rex to yourself, and you have to cut it like behind your cards.
A lot of times
that's so unnatural to ever cut chips behind your cards.
The line's there, and it's just a guide,
and you end up with a lot of like angly times where someone will be cutting chips out at a distance where it's like, is this actually a bet or are they cutting the chips out? And then you've like the ambiguity of like, is this a string bet? There just seems like there should be a line. Just make a line.
Well, there was one time I was playing, this might have been at the Jewel, and I was like cutting out a bet, and I was gonna bet 75, right? And I get to like 50, and he's like call, and I'm like, and I was, you
just get to drop your, you basically get to angle, or not angle him, but you get to free roll him there.
So
when you have it, you just let go of all the chips. When you don't, you just pull back.
I free rolled myself. I negative free rolled myself. I said, I was going to bet 75. So like, I was just like,
God damn it, Tortoise, you're too honest.
I know. But I was going to say, I was like,
because
bluffing.
I was bluffing or whatever. Yeah. So it was just like, obviously I was, or no, I might not even been bluffing, but like, it was like the getting snapped before I like, you knew
you're never good.
Like,
you're never good.
Not good.
It's like, it's going a little thin here.
I think it was like thin value or something. It was just like, oh shit. Well, all right. Just take the 25. I don't care.
But the last thing you should do is record or reward a play like that.
I know. Too nice.
I've had a couple scenarios. Man, one.
It wasn't at the Jewel. It was somewhere else.
One was in when we were doing the vlog back in 2017. I can't remember when we started the vlog. I think 2017. 2017, 2017. Anyway, it was when I final tabled the little one for one drop. On day one, I played a monumental chip lead pot. And I'm going to get a little bit of the details wrong because it's been 8 years or whatever. But if you guys ever want to go back and watch that vlog, the entire story is there. And what happened was I rivered quads with jacks in a single race pot where I flatted this kid to my right that we had just been like battling, and we were super deep. We were like 150 blinds effective or something along those lines, something ridiculous. So I flat him with jacks. Comes like jack high 2 diamonds, or maybe jack high 1 diamonds. It might have been like jack 8x 1 diamond, and he like bet, calls my raise. Turn is, I think turn gave me quads, but maybe not. I don't remember. Anyway, we get to the river and it backs into diamonds, but the jack of diamonds filled the backdoor flush, and he had some over-ear headphones in, like blasting, I guess. And he made a bet, whatever it was. It was a big bet. It was like 3/4 pot or something like that. But I mean, we had fucking mounds of chips. Me specifically, because like I have like 200 big blinds, and this is back in the day when they didn't really color up.
Yeah.
So I just have like towers of 40 stacks.
Yep.
Right. So obviously I can't push them all forward. So I do the reasonable thing, and this is before they really had the all-in buttons. Mm-hmm. And I say, I must not have said all. I either didn't say all in or he covered me, one or the other, because he didn't bust this hand, but he crippled himself. So whatever it was, I'm pretty sure I said all in, and he must have like covered or something like that. So I jam and I slide in a 40 stack forward. It was the best I could do, you know, of my big chips, but it by no means covered him. And he just snap calls. Mm-hmm. Just never asked for the bet size or anything like that. Right. Like what I slid out was maybe only barely enough for even a regular raise or anything like that. And he just like instantly calls, just call. And I table quads. And now he tries to get out of paying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the dealer spoke literally no English. She was an Asian woman that just like maybe 5 or 6 words of English, but like I was in the 2 seat, he was in the 1, so like all this happened within earshot. Mm-hmm. And she's trying to explain to the floor that I said all in, so it was like one of the few English words she he said all in, and the floor's like hearing it out, and honestly like it was kind of unfair, because I feel like this is a shitty thing to say, but I feel like if roles had been reversed, I still could have won the ruling in my favor, because I was like basically the floor was showing a lot of deference to me specifically. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, the dealer can't speak English in this situation, and I recognize you as like a longtime reg. I'll listen to you more than anything else. So I kind of feel like just me being me kind of swayed it, but I was very much in the right in this particular instance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's nothing to sway.
But I'm saying
all in.
What I'm saying is, if it was the opposite way, I think that the floor would have shown deference to me and like given me the benefit of the doubt, making me only call a min raise, which is a little bit shitty. Like to recognize that in hindsight,
right? But you also never would have made that mistake.
You also wouldn't. You would just pay. Like,
well, if I'm an asshole with headphones on, I don't know what I would do. But that was like kind of the moral of the story. So the guy's basically saying like, I would have never called, and it's like a pot-sized jam, and he has the second nut flush. And it's like, yeah, you fucking would have. Right. Like, what are you going to back into the second nut flush and just like give it up? Yeah. Like, come on, man. Like, of course you were going to call.
Right. Yeah, he has to pay there, because then he can just free roll you.
Of course. But man, it was like this big, like epic thing. Obviously, like it catapulted me. I think I bagged something stupid like 250 big blinds on day 1, and I don't think I relinquished the chip lead until we were down to 3 people. So like it was monumental.
At which point you had your traditional 3-handed breakdown.
Oh yeah, the typical. I lost to deuces 3 times all in versus the guy who won it.
Wow, that's brutal.
Like imagine getting deuces 3 times and finding a way for them to be good all 3 times and hold. That's hard. That's a parlay, man. That's a parlay that only parlay. I could lose. Mm-hmm. Felt bad.
Speaking of tournaments,
I was gonna say we could do math on air and figure out what the likelihood of that is. All right.
Doing that.
Since we well, actually, before we get to this brewer hand real quick, there is an update currently on the WSOP online schedule.
Yes,
when I say update, I mean when there's news. It's not exactly an update. We still don't know what the schedule is going to be, but the rumor is that there is some sort of issue with, I don't think it's gaming. I think it has to do specifically with the software platform. So Kev Math has been putting out updates as often as he could. He quote tweeted this article by PokerFuse, basically saying another update on the pending software merging liquidity update. And I think he also put out an earlier tweet. Yeah, he said in an earlier tweet, there appears to be some sort of governmental snag that is causing the delay in announcing the WSOP online bracelet schedule. So I'm not sure what that is. We don't really have any more information, but we do know that the new software is being tested currently in Nevada and New Jersey. There's some screenshots in this article. For anybody who hasn't been to PA or Michigan, it's the same software that they have. I've gotten to play on it. I streamed it a couple years ago when they first launched in PA for their bracelet series. It's wonderful. They could do mystery bounties, like all the capacities and capabilities of things that you've wanted them
Everything
to be able to
you hate
do.
about this software, the current software.
Right. They fix it.
It's not 888, right?
It is 888.
Oh, it is, but it's just better.
Yeah.
Okay.
From my understanding, they're just like locked in to fucking 888. Otherwise, they would be using GGs.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure in Toronto, WSOP client is GG, or GG is just partnered with WSOP client. But either way, or sorry, not WSOP client, WSOP brand. But either way, like I imagine the hopes are that sometime in the future, should they end up merging with GG or partnering with GG in some capacity, that their software will be utilized here. But in the meantime, this is 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 years.
With online
I see a
poker,
little tab here for
if you-
Blast, which maybe that
Well,
means
if you,
that's like Russian cash.
Yeah,
No,
if you-
Blast-
they already have that.
Blast has always been there.
Well, if you
really?
click on those white arrows, you can scroll it up and you can see the whole yeah, see that's the old one. And if you go up, then you'll see the new one. Yeah.
Yeah. Blast is the four-handed sit and go, right? Or the three-handed sit and go?
Yeah, it's like their.
That's
I
always
thought
been
maybe
there.
it was like a Russian cash.
Blast, yeah, they've always had
that. I don't think the client supports a fast fold.
Well, I mean, the player pool isn't big enough, so
Right.
I guess that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like fast fold, I don't play online cash. I'm just kind of repeating what I hear, but fast fold type of games are just like largely unbeatable compared to the rake.
Yeah.
The pool just gets way too tough. The rake is too high, and you're just basically playing for rake back at that point. But yeah, huge overhaul. PKO tournaments will be involved. Mystery bounty tournaments, multi-flight tournament. Multi-flight is so nice.
Oh shit!
So they have the
we gotta
ability-
study PKOs now.
PKO is such a game changer. I'm so excited for this. But the big thing is that they haven't been able to do in the past, especially with Nevada, is stop an event. So recall, if you guys recall, for a time they were doing we'll do the final table live type of thing. But do you remember how those played out? There was like huge controversy around them.
Can't remember.
Okay, so they would play down to the final table, like let's say a final table of 6 for a 6 max, and they would get down to the final 6, and then it keeps dealing. And it becomes really weird because imagine you're in that spot and you don't know that they've frozen the stacks. So what do?
Yeah.
Right? Like everybody gets another hand now after having made it. And at some point, basically they just realize they can close the client and let it play to completion, and it won't matter what the results are. But I think the very first time it happened, like people were like there grinding, playing it out, and then wanting like the result.
Right.
When it's
Yeah.
like, no, you actually have to, you have to show up. We
Yeah.
preserve the stacks.
Wow.
So now they have the capacity, or they will have the capacity to run multi-flight tournaments, to pause the tournament, to pick it up on, future dates, which is really exciting in my opinion, because I think it now trends towards the possibility of maybe having day one flights for events like the Colossus, which now you got me. I'll play the Colossus 16
Let's
fucking
go.
times. Honestly, like if
Like
they
where you
did-
could just
go.
play into the money and then it's like, okay, guys, now you can come in.
that's what they do anyway, right? That's what they do in the live side. So it's like, save me 15 hours of being at fucking Paris.
Colossus just got that much softer. There's like 15 extra buy-ins right there.
Exactly. Exactly. Like if you let me just grind, if they did half of the entries online and half live, you got me, man. I'm absolutely in to play
have
the
to deal
down
with-
bad opener.
You don't have to deal with the crowds, and you still have the benefit of getting the huge first place prize.
I can play it on my fucking phone while I'm grinding. I'm literally losing 100K pots while playing a goddamn Colossus on my phone. Like what more could we
Just
ask
add
for?
online flights to everything. You can play a live flight of the Colossus
They
while
could-
playing
yeah.
an online flight of the Colossus.
That's funny. I was like, they could add all the
True.
online flights
That's
they want.
true.
I'll be there 10 a.m.
They already
with
do
bells
this.
on.
Same.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's always going to be soft. That's the other thing is like it doesn't hurt anything. The live flights will always be softer.
If not even more softer. Because,
correct. We saw this with the
players like
WSOP.
yourself would
Yeah, I would
play
never
that.
show up to the Colossus.
No,
it makes day two harder.
Yeah, the end. Yeah, day 2 would be harder, right?
A little bit, but not. We saw this with what they did with the Bahamas, right? We talked a lot about this,
Right.
Where it was like, okay, they're running all. Everybody was so upset. They're like, oh my god, this makes it so much tougher that they're running these online day ones for the rest of the world to show up to the Bahamas. It's like, well, it makes your day 2 a little bit tougher, but think of how fucking soft your day 1s just got.
And think of how much bigger the prize pool is too. That's
Prize
the thing.
pool's bigger.
Right.
You're playing a tougher day
Yeah.
2, but you're playing for way more money. So
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be that much easier to get into the money.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, for sure.
And your stack
for
is
sure.
worth more once you get there because
And-
there's 1,000 more players.
And the
right?
good players are more handcuffed. They're going to accumulate fewer chips playing in a tougher online environment than they would if they showed up and played a bunch of fucking wrecks from Missouri.
That's all right.
Shout out to
And-
Missouri
And the tortoise.
and the tortoise. No, the tortoise is too tough. He doesn't he doesn't give up those chips at all.
I loved that video of the turtle at the baseball game.
I'm sure you
Isn't
did.
that
Saw
great?
The way that turtle was fucking running like
was-
super fast. That was the fastest turtle I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
We're surprisingly fast when we need to be.
Oh yeah.
Kerstetter sent me a T-shirt today and said, if you ever need a T-shirt for the tortoise for the podcast, get him this one. And it's a turtle dressed up in barbecue gear with a chef's hat, and it says slow cooker.
Perfect.
Oh, love it.
That is perfect,
I love that.
man.
That's
What more
great.
could you ask for?
Yeah.
So yeah, exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to this. Would be great if I could just play live cash and then online WSOP bracelet
This
events.
is something probably, I'm sure, for next year.
No, that's why the schedule hasn't been released yet.
Oh, right. You can play the online. I'm saying the day one.
The day,
day one.
I'm just supposing that stuff.
Right,
yeah. Of
right,
course, that's not going to happen this year.
He's just in Berkey Dreamland.
Right.
For tournaments.
Right,
where
Look,
he
you
doesn't
guys should
have
be
to-
happy. I've a full,
Oh my God, he found it. Look at that.
It's a full
That's
180
incredible.
hunt. I went from saying fuck the World Series, I'm not playing anything, to now all of a sudden getting excited that I can play some down bad 300s online.
There you go.
You know, like fuck it, make it a flip and go.
Yeah.
I don't even want to play.
There you go.
Day 1 of Colossus, flip and go. Let's go.
Yep. You just get like
I'm in.
They've got flip and goes this summer.
Well, they've had them for the last few, but
Right.
that's another one where I think it's a huge mistake that they're not doing them online. Like the flip and go process should just be online.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they probably couldn't do it with the old software, but like, why do you have to walk to the fucking horseshoe, get in line, all to pull a high card,
Right.
and then run a board? Like, I don't need to be there for that. Just tell me if I made the second round or
Right.
not.
And on top of that, like they should just run them all summer. I don't know why they don't.
Right.
Like they run them like in a specific period of time, but like
Well, I think
that tournament
Imagine
would
how
be
bad you could
huge if
degen
run them
that.
all
that
summer.
tournament,
You just be flipping
tournament
and flipping and
annually
flipping.
over the last 2 years has been absolute ass.
Yeah, it's Reg Fest. It's Reg Fest Central. but,
Terribly.
like,
I mean, it's just like one of the worst events, one of the worst value
Right.
events of the summer. It's not even remotely close. I've somehow managed to never play it, which is insane because it's such a degen fest.
Yeah.
shout out to Scott Seaver.
Bro.
Imagine how many. Imagine
He's
how,
going to have to win it twice to fucking break even.
Imagine
Yeah.
how many bullets he'd fire if it was online.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Let's get that 100K bank account emptied.
You imagine you fire like 30, 40 bullets and you just can't get in.
He fired 32.
No.
That I'm not wrong, right?
47, I thought it was.
I thought it was 32.
I
So
thought it was like an insane amount.
It's an
like,
insane
I
amount.
thought it was above 40. I don't know if it's
And you
35,
have-
40, whatever.
It's 9 hands, so you have 1 and 9 shot every time.
Yeah. I think he went 0 and 30. I think it's 32. That number sticks out in my craw.
Either way, that's running pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't be that lucky in life and expect to win a fucking flip and go on less than 32 bullets.
That's true.
You got to pony up the 33rd, you know? Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about this Brewer hand that happened at Triton.
Yeah. Wow.
Little three-handed debacle. So this one's interesting. I think it's worth discussing because obviously when it was presented to like the group chat, my instinct was just deferring to Brewer. Like, well, if he called off, it's probably good.
Yeah.
And I came up with a bunch of justifications of like, well, yeah, he called off this hand, but like I'm sure he would just fold others. Like if he had Queen Jack suited or offsuit or something to that effect. So the way the action went is there were 3 left. Brewer jams all but 1 blind. Is that accurate? He shoved like 10 blind? No, less.
It's less
He
than
shoved
one,
like
yeah.
8 blinds.
He shoves, I think he has, the blinds are 300, 600. He has 5.5 million. So he has just over 9 bigs.
Okay.
And
But he leaves
He puts 5 million.
Just shy of a blind behind.
Exactly. Yeah. He
right.
leaves himself just under a big blind.
Okay, so then the chip leader Andy Nee rejams for 14 million covering both, and the big blind tank calls off.
So Brewer has ace 8 off.
And Andy Nee jams ace jack. Not that that's important. Then the big blind has a decision with ace 10. He has Brewer covered by 3 big blinds. 2 big blinds actually.
Right.
So very, very, very close here between second and third, and very distant from first to third. I'm shocked that the big blind calls off here, knowing that Brewer is at risk. But he ends up tank calling off with ace 10, which I think we can all see is like, or all understand is probably a pretty big mistake. Like you're kind of just hoping that Andy has like a pair king queen.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's lighting it on fire.
Yeah, it has to be.
Ace 10 is like that. When I ran this, depending on what exact setup you give in terms of like, do you give Chris the option to like do other stuff like min raise, jam, whatever? The call off range that the big blind was generally supposed to have was in the region of like 9s plus ace queen. So ace 10 off is way outside of that, and it's losing a lot. It's probably losing like 30k plus or something. Yeah, maybe more.
Yeah. So now let's talk about Brewer's decision. He has 1 big blind, and basically he has the choice of sticking it in and hoping he has some equity with ace 8 versus 2 ranges. And giving himself a chance to win the tournament some amount of the time. Because obviously if he triples here, he's now the chip leader. Or he can fold and assure himself second place, whatever frequency Andy's range is over the call-off range of Nicholas. And I think it's kind of tough. So I think like if we think about this from Brewer's perspective, where Nicholas is calling off correctly instead of incorrectly, right? Let's assume he's calling off with like good hands, like queens, kings, hands he doesn't really want to get it in with, but has to. Brewer's just going to finish third almost always anyway. So from that standpoint, I can understand the desire to gamble, right? Because it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to be like 20% to be the chip leader. And that EV feels like it's got to be really, really close to the times that Andy just knocks Nicholas out here. Because you assume Nicholas is the strongest range of the 3.
Yeah.
So,
right?
Maybe I'm missing something, but doesn't he leave the 1 chip behind to fold?
For exactly this scenario.
Exactly this scenario?
Right, this is exactly what I said.
That's why I was...
no, I mean, maybe I'm missing something.
That's why I was surprised to see him call. Because a big part of why the leaving a chip behind or whatever play is used is because it allows you to do this. It's because it allows you to get away from it when 2 players are all in. So the only thing I can think is that maybe he was planning to fold, but then the fact that Shweety took so long capped his range enough that it made him decide to call.
Right.
Or maybe he didn't mean to leave quite so few chips behind or something like that. But the funny thing about it was when I ran it, Shweety calling off too wide makes it worse for Chris to call off ace 8 because Shweety has more ace jacks and ace 10s and pocket 8s that he shouldn't usually have. Because our equity with ace 8 actually goes down against Shweety's range when he starts to call wider. So that's kind of the interesting part of this, that I think it's possible that the way Shweety acted and how long he took the call might have influenced Chris's decision. But at the same time, when I did run it, it pretty conclusively said fold. You know, when I ran the ICM only version, so 1 hand ICM, it liked the idea of putting in almost all of Chris's stack, but it basically wanted to fold after facing the jam from 2 players.
Right.
And then when I ran it with FGS, Future Game Simulation, of 5 additional hands, so basically 2 3-handed orbits of play. And the hands after the first one are all done push fold, but because they're so shallow, that's actually fine in this case. The interesting thing was that using FGS shifted it to where it wanted Chris to now start only putting about 4 or 5 big blinds in instead of putting most of his stack.
Funny, because I was going to ask that. I was like, I wonder if there has to be like, some people just like they leave one chip or they leave a half a blind or they leave one blind. Like there has to be a solve or some optimal thing to do where you leave the exact amount that's the optimal amount to leave behind, right?
I think from what I could tell from the sim, and it was tricky to figure it out because I had a bunch of different sizes in the sim, and these things are hard to really decipher sometimes. But from what I could tell, the amount that it wanted Chris to risk was it wanted him to put enough in that the big blind has no incentive to just call instead of being all in.
Right.
Because if he just makes it 2 or 3 bigs,
right, he can call and then
the big blind actually has a price where he can call, realize equity, and so on. But once his raise size goes above like 4 bigs, what happens is the big blind is no longer getting such a good price that they have any real calling range at all. And the big blind basically plays jam or fold. And the small blind also is basically playing jam or fold. So risking 4 or 5 bigs from your 9 big blind stack, essentially, like, you just cross the threshold where everybody is playing shovel fold against you anyway. But now you have the maximum amount of chips left over so that you can fold if 2 players get all in.
So you kind of have to find that sweet spot where you do get that fold equity, but then you still, if you do fold, you leave yourself enough back where you give yourself the best chance to get back in it.
Right, and that was the interesting thing about the difference between FGS and ICM was that the one hand ICM was saying, put a lot of your stack in, get more fold equity on the initial shove. And then FGS was saying, well, actually, keeping more big blinds behind for the next hand is a bit more meaningful.
Right.
Because let's say you get dealt aces on the next hand. Well, that's now a more meaningful spot when you have 4 bigs instead of when you have 1.
Yeah, doubling up to 8 as opposed to doubling up to 2 or 3,
yeah,
right?
So
massive.
The subsequent impact of the future hands starts to make it a bit more meaningful to leave a little bit more behind in the way of extra chips. So I was a little bit surprised to see Chris put like almost all the chips in there to leave only 500K behind. If it's me in that spot, and again, normally I would just defer to Chris because obviously he's an incredible player. But being in that spot myself, I probably would have just left like 2.5 bigs, like 1 orbit of blinds and antes, or 2.6 bigs, so I have just over that, maybe. I don't know.
I think sometimes this just becomes reflexive, where you're just so accustomed to leaving 1 blind behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is definitely a big part of it. And I think it's really interesting to see that when you actually run sims for this, that there is, there are things that, the solver prefers leaving this amount compared to leaving this amount. It does actually make a difference.
To be because it's such a difference, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you think about like double, like exponentially, right? So like if you double up to 2 blinds and then you double up again, you have 4. But if you have 4 and you double up to 8, then you get to 16.
Right.
It's massive. You could be like the chip leader, or
Well, I think you could always make that case. The reason why it's differentiating in this particular spot is for the times that it goes jam call, and you have a fold, and the second place guy doubles.
Right.
You still want to be able to just not auto finish third.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's probably
the whole purpose of
right. And I imagine that probably weighed a lot into Chris's decision, where it's like, okay, I may not have much equity here, but I do have an ace, and that alone may be enough to justify calling off. Because even if I only win this pot 15% of the time, I'm chip leader 15% of the time, heads up. There's no way he could win the pot and not be heads up, right? Because he's the shortest stack. Right.
Yeah.
So
somebody would bust.
Yeah, if he wins the pot, he's almost assuredly heads up, or the guy who's currently in second place could only have he would only have like 2 million.
Yeah.
Right. So if he came in second, if it went like Brewer wins the pot, guy second in chips comes in second in the hand or whatever, he wins the side pot, he's still only going to have like 2.2 million. So I would assume, not speaking for Chris, but I would imagine what went into the calculation is if I fold and what was his name? Schweeny? Schweety. If he wins this pot, which I expect him to have the strongest range, so he's probably going to win this pot often. If he wins this pot, then I auto finish third. I'm all in for less than a big blind the next hand, and I just don't really ever come back from that. But even if 15% of the time I happen to win this pot, I'm either going to be heads up with a chip lead, or I'm going to be three-handed where somebody's crippled down to now 3 big blinds.
So here's an interesting question.
4 big blinds.
Because I ran this part of it as well. If, let's say, Chris folds here. He has 500K behind. And then let's say Shweety doubles through. So he's going to have the chip lead with something in the region of like 19.3 million, I think. And then Knee is going to have like 6.5 or 7.5. How much more than third place money do you think Chris's stack is worth? So third place was 354, I believe. How much above that do you think that 500, that less than 1 big blind is worth if Chris folds?
I guess it's like relative to the equity that he'll have all in, right? So like he'll have a random hand versus whatever. So let's say maybe 30%
well, this
equity.
This is without accounting for the fact that he's going to be in the big blind next hand. This is just looking at stack values. So,
right. But that's a little misleading, right? Because we do know what the outcome of the next hand is.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, if we look in a vacuum, if one player has 500,
like what's 500K chips worth?
500K versus 19 million versus 7 point something million. How much is the 500K worth?
It probably earns you like 15, 20K, I would imagine.
Yeah, it does. It's that third place money is 354, and the margin for keeping that 500K was an extra 17K.
Okay.
So staying in the tournament means that, you know, whatever the additional amount of the prize pool is beyond that, that's still left to play for, you know, that your equity in that amount is 17K. So you're gonna win that prize pool, you know, a certain percentage of the time. And I think,
well, like over the aggregate, you're gonna earn 17K.
I think most people, the reason I bring this up is because I think most people would look at that and say, well, he's just guaranteed to get third, right? Because you kind of said it a second ago, right? But the interesting thing about it is, yes, he might get third 99% of the time.
Right, but like 1% he wins it.
There's a 17K value attached to the times that he doesn't.
Correct.
And that is certainly meaningful here. In a 25K buy-in tournament, it's 3/4 of a buy-in.
Well, no. To be more specific, there's a 17K value attached every single, like on average, right?
Yeah,
so it's actually much more significant the times he doesn't get third.
Yeah.
The dollar
Time
amount
he doesn't get third. It's
total-
whatever second place.
It's like 6 figures.
compared to third.
The total value of the total expectation of his stack
Is 17K.
Is 17K more
Additional.
than third place
Correct.
money.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So
that means he'll get more, better than second or better than third place that much often
enough exactly.
To
He's going
garner
to
that
capture
win rate.
some percentage of the remaining money on top of third place.
Right.
So I think the general idea is, when average stacks are so shallow, keeping 1 big blind is better than it seems like it is.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in the main event, an average stack at the final table is 40 bigs. Keeping 1 big blind doesn't do a lot for you. But keeping 1 big blind when one of the other guys has 12 and the other one has like 25.
Those spots are fascinating to me in the main event, because obviously there's still a ton of value to leaving chips behind, because just having a chip in a chair in the main is like, you know, Greggy proved that he came back from a half of a big blind and went on to win the whole thing. But what's interesting to me is that, and you know, obviously I haven't simmed this, but I'm sure if we did some like FGS calculations, which may be not all that accurate because the average stack is too deep.
The depth of the main,
there's not that much push pull going on. But more importantly, what I'm trying to get at is, I think you would start to see a lot, like as stacks increase, there's probably an incentive to keep more chips behind. With a limitation, right? So like, it's never going to be like 5 big blinds. Like you're not gonna open for like 8 bigs and leave 5 behind. Maybe some very like unique outlier scenarios, but that's not gonna be very common. But what I'm getting at is like, there's probably gonna be a lot of spots where it's like 2, 2.5, 3, and the issue becomes that with each half a big blind, let's say, that you add on to what you're keeping behind, there's a significant amount of fold equity attached to that from your opponent. So like, it creates this sick scenario where like someone might just say, I think he's bluffing often, or I think he's going to fold often enough, right? I'm all in.
Yeah.
When you leave like 3.5 behind, where they might have a hand that like they would have just folded if you left 1.5
Chance
behind.
did that.
Right.
I don't know I don't think this hand was televised, but I read a Poker News update about it. It was a hand between Chance and Dan Smith in one of the high rollers like last year or the year before. And it was a spot where Dan Smith, the board was like Jack 9, something with a missed flush draw on the flop, and Dan Smith barrels the river and leaves like 1.5 bigs behind or something, and Chance jams with 5 high and a busted flush draw, trying to make Dan fold his bluffs,
Right.
because he has king high, queen high, etc. that he's bluffing with sometimes and can't call the extra 1.5 bigs. And Dan just has like a calling hand and just calls, and Chance shows 5 high. The update sort of said he like sheepishly showed it or whatever and laughed about it. But like, you can find bluffs there. And we're getting to the point where people are going to start finding bluffs for the extra 1.5 bigs and 1 big and stuff like that. It's a fun time to be in tournament poker.
It's a weird. It's a weird time.
It's a fun time. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
You guys it's just you guys probably cash players just hate it, I would imagine, but
It's just so different. Those scenarios just don't show up in a cash game.
I don't ever hate anything that is another layer of strategy.
yeah, I guess it's true.
But mechanically, it's awkward enough where it looks annoying. Like it's like when small bets were first beginning to be executed. In cash, no one cared because it's like you're super deep. So it's like, all right, well, fuck you. I'm not a folder anyway, and you're giving me a better price. Like
it's always gonna
whatever. Who cares? All you're doing is teaching me how to check raise better.
Yeah.
But when they started to execute them in tournaments, it's like, okay, this is very annoying because we're not that deep. So I don't exactly just get to like YOLO it off here every time somebody
such
bets
a good
small.
price.
Right? And I'm getting a disguise like
It's such a significant portion of my stack.
mechanically it became so annoying, and I think that's a good indicator or a good barometer for when a strategy has legs. Like when you start to bother the stronger players that are accustomed to certain mechanics, it's going to mean that you're doing something that has long-standing value, right? Same thing holds true with like overbetting. I remember this must have been like 2015. A hand I played against Jason Kuhn in a 3-6-12 game in Ivy's room. He opened under the gun, the 600 called, and I defended the big blind with either Queen 5 of clubs or King 5 of clubs. I don't recall. I think it was King 5 of clubs, and it came like Ace King 7. 2 clubs. Check. He overbets. And I'd never seen this before. It's like 2015, right? It's just like, what the fuck is he doing? And like, I know and love Jason and I have the utmost respect for him, but also there's this like, especially when you're in the dark, which I was at the time, like he was so much more studied, and I don't even really think we knew that to like what degree at that point, because he hadn't really burst onto the high roller scene just yet. Like not completely. He had played a few and done well.
I think he was like respected, but he wasn't at like the kind of GOAT status. That he
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like I know him to be an elite tournament player, and I know that he's a part of a big group at the time that are also very elite. But it's also just like I've never seen this once in my life in the cash games that I play, and there's this certain arrogance around your discipline, right? So for me, instead of like immediately gravitating towards like, well, I mean, there was probably a part of me that was like very curious of like, I know Jason's very good, like what is he doing type of thing. There was another part of me of just like silly tournament players, like he thinks he's gonna get me here when I have like ace deuce, and I'm just gonna like call him down for 3, but I'm gonna fuck him because I have a pair and a flush draw here. So I call, and it turns an offsuit queen, and I check, and he bets 2x pot, and I just smile, and I go, man, I would have called a lot less, and I show him my hand, and he just kind of like nods and passes his hand in the muck. And now looking back on it, it's like I got fucked so hard there.
You folded a pair and a flush draw
Instantly. It wasn't even a consideration, Hunt. How could I ever be winning?
Yeah.
Like how could I ever? Because your brain back then operated very binarily. It's like bluffs were going to be queen 10, jack 10, etc. Well, queen 10's not going to keep bluffing. It made a pair, and jack 10's now the nuts, and value is going to be like 2 pair plus. So I'm drawing to a fucking club, and I'm certainly not going to get it often enough to justify calling 2x pot. It's real money. It's like $40,000. Like, LOL, you thought you got me. I'm going to wiggle off this one. But now looking back at it, like knowing what I know now and like how much strategy's changed, it's like, Well, he just absolutely stuck it to me there.
Nowadays in Jason's spot, you're like, well, bottom pair, got a 2-pair blocker. I guess I'm rocketing it off.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And like, conversely, if I'm in that situation as a defender, it's just like, oh, thank God I don't have a decision. Like, I just have a happy call.
Right. Yeah.
And like, if I go unimproved,
thank
then
God
like,
I have a
you know,
flush draw.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's like,
you don't want to be in that spot with like the ace-7 no suit, you know?
right.
Like,
Well, it's okay because at least it mixes. Like, you're just so happy to have a pure hand.
Yeah, that's
you don't
true.
care if it's a pure fold or a pure call, but like, you just don't want to be caught in the middle where it's like, okay, you have the king 5 of clubs and it comes ace king 7 rainbow 1 club. It's like, well, you have to peel this one because the only king X you call is the pair plus backdoor, and then you peel and it comes like, you know, the offsuit 5. And you still face the overbet. It's like, wow, fuck me. I mean, we're calling this one down, but I don't know that it's gonna be good for us.
this isn't going to feel good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting to look back now in hindsight and see how strategies evolved before our eyes. Even like, you know, like this is also worth noting. And I know we're on a tangent from like what the strat chat's actually supposed to be, which is bankroll management, but we'll get there. I promise.
We'll segue.
One of the things that I think is like really important to understand, and this is still true to today, and I think it's like where or why there are multiple lanes within the strategy space, is that people who are on the precipice of discovery in one realm are very far apart from people who are ahead of the game in another. So I would have considered myself like very much ahead of the game in live strategies at the time. I was the only one overbetting. I was the only one small betting. I was the only one, you know, doing certain things with regard to the straddle, etc. But I was miles, and I probably still am, miles behind somebody like Jason, who was deep in the lab when it came to theory, when it came to running sims. Like, he was just so far ahead of the collective with that information. He and his whole crew, him, Ike, and whoever else was involved, B-Tech, whatever, right? So it's like, for a guy who was beating online and then high-stake MTTs, his advancement in the strategy world, in the theory land and everything else was decades ahead of, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but like, he was just miles and miles and miles ahead of the absolute best that we're doing in the live realm. But there's no incentive in the live realm to get to that level, right? Because it wasn't necessarily applicable. If you're miles ahead of your competition, and like, if the gap between you and your competition is just as wide as the gap is that existed between me and Jason, ignorance is bliss, man. Mm-hmm. You don't need to know all that shit, because doubling the gap between you and your competition doesn't really, it's diminishing returns, right? It starts to almost like loop you back to getting like back on their level, because you're doing things that are so out there and so outlandish that you start leveling yourself and forgetting like, oh no, their range is just like super narrow.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like fucked yourself. So I find it interesting, because I think that even applies to today's game, where you know, there are people that have spent the last decade really diving deep into theory and forgetting all about the practice. And then there are people that just like specifically worry about the practice and forget all about the mechanics, which both can have a path to great success. The like training sphere or whatever, I think like merges all that together. You know, you have some sites that are dedicated strictly towards the theory and like theory crafting for online and things of that nature. Something like Run It Once, where they're just getting like elite minds that are grinding 109s every single day on stars and GG against the best in the world, right? Like, well, that's a fucking totally different world than showing up to the Jewel of the South, having to beat these guys who are pumping hot dogs down their gullet all day long.
Those hot dogs are good.
Yeah, that's what everyone says. Well, you're not going to experience them for much longer, because World Series is upon us, buddy.
I know.
And this actually goes out to you, I think. I think you're going to be our number one expert to start this discussion.
Okay.
So Ian Simpson put a tweet out earlier this week, and I've had it bookmarked because I thought it was a really important one as far as the discussion for the summer goes. He said, huge time of year for poker, and that means the temptation to shot take and play bigger is real. Manage your bankrolls carefully, whilst, he meant whilst, right?
Whilst, yes.
Okay. Who knows, man? This is fucking foreign language. You asked me if I've ever been to a foreign land. I mean, basically, reading this tweet is equivalent of that. I don't know.
Hey,
if whist is a whole other.
He's British. You're the foreign language.
That's
American
true.
is the foreign language.
Touche. Whilst big events and huge prize pools are exciting, they can make you feel some FOMO if you don't play them. Money is fucking hard to come by, and the last thing you want to do is damage your finances for a poker game. If you feel like you're missing out, remember, there will always be another poker tournament and another big series. You'll have other chances to play major events. Good luck this spring, aka summer, everyone. This really spoke to me because that, like, the way he spoke about the FOMO of not playing the biggest prize pools, the biggest events, like, that is my tournament career in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I can remember still vividly to this day, 2012, I'm grinding the series and they get either 10K or 25K satellite off for the $1 million one drop. I think it was a 25K. For the $1 million one drop, it didn't guarantee, but it got one seat, and second place was like 750K. And I remember that entire day having FOMO over having not fired a 25K. 2012.
25.
I've never played anything bigger than the
Right.
main event.
Right.
Matter of fact, I was a few events away from being stone broke. And I was just so, like, I remember being in a smaller event and talking to my table mates, being like, you know, what would you do? Like, if you get heads up, because I think Deeb ended up getting heads up with Gus Hansen, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a lot of talk about, would you take the 900K or the seat? Because it's a must play. So it's not like you just get $1 million. And I'm like, I would take the seat and sell it like 0.95 markdown, you know? Just like ensure that I have like half of myself in this massive event and I'd fucking win the whole thing. Like, you just gas yourself up. You convince yourself of all this stuff, right? And
It's
it's like
18 million to first.
I'm just ready to burn it to the ground. It's like, I don't know how much money I have under my mattress, but like, let's fucking go. We're putting in this 25K.
Man, that was so 2012 Berkey.
So 2012 Berkey. But these people still exist now, and the schedule's never been more ripe for FOMO. You know, so like, how? I know you're coming a little bit more from the recreational side of things, but you still have to be considerate. You have to be managing.
Absolutely.
How do you approach this?
I decide first off what my budget is, right? So I'm like, okay, this is how much I want to put towards the summer, and then I know. So if you're making a package and you're selling, then you can obviously play more stuff, whatever. So like, I know, like, here's how much I want to sell. This is what I want on myself, and this is what I'm willing to spend. And then, so once I know that, then I go through the schedule and I pick out the best tournaments.
You spend your budget.
Right. I spend I make my budget first, and then I spend, and then I'll, you know, maybe if I go over or under a little bit, if I go under, I can like, okay, maybe I can pick out a few more tournaments.
This is like a fun exercise. It's kind of like building a fantasy team.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you have like X amount of dollars.
Right, exactly. And then maybe you go over, there's too many tournaments and now you're over your budget, and it's like, can I withstand to be a little bit over my budget? If you can, it's okay. If not, then you just look at the schedule and say, okay, what's one of these tournaments, two of these tournaments that I can live without playing? So
once you do that, once you cut those, what happens the day that event runs?
You don't play it.
You're just emotionally stable enough to say.
Actually,
like,
it depends on what you did in the previous tournament. Right. So
that's
like,
true too. That's an important thing to acknowledge.
It is. Yeah. It is like, you know. Okay. So like, maybe you win one, or you have a couple deep runs, and now you have extra money. Well, you shouldn't just fire away too. You should also think like, okay, I have this extra much money. Do I want to just fire it all? Because you can do that. It's the summer. There's always something running. But maybe you should be like, no, okay, I still have this bankroll management. I still only want to spend this amount of the profit that I made so far. And then
you're a very responsible manager.
That's what we do.
I mean, it's clear why you have the job you have.
Yeah.
Hunt, from like a professional standpoint, where I assume volume is just paramount to you.
Yeah, this summer for sure.
Yeah, so like for you, it's not really about managing anything. Like, let me rephrase. It's not that it's not about managing bankroll. It's more so about managing what piece of yourself is at risk. Can you talk a little bit about like how you go through that process, and then moreover, I guess, the expectation aspect of it? Because I think everybody fires you know, the way somebody in the chat, this is a great line. The way to cure FOMO is YOLO. And I think
That's an option too.
I think that ends up happening
Not
because
financial advice.
right. But I think you also ultimately kind of chase the dragon a little bit because the opportunity cost of not playing feels so detrimental that you forego all of the risk profile that you set aside. And we have to bear in mind the vast majority of the people leave the summer with less money than they started. There are more losers than winners over the course of the summer, even if you're a longstanding pro, even if you are the top of your game. Like it's by no means a guarantee that you're going to earn over this 2-month period. So how do you manage those expectations and kind of deal with the bankroll hit that you're likely to take?
Well, I think for me, I have the luxury of being in the position where I have a really good backing deal that I'm happy with, and I have a backer that I work well with, and it just makes everything exponentially easier when you're in that position, especially for someone who, I'm married, I have a family, I have bills to pay and things to take care of that, you know, require me to be responsible with money. Having a backing deal is an amazing asset for someone in my position because it means I can approach the summer from a perspective not of how much can I spend and what can I play, but what do I want to play? And based on the deal that I have and the things that we currently have agreed that this is the stuff that I can just play whenever because it's part of the deal as a standard. And then, you know, what do I want to play above and beyond that? What do I think is going to be good enough value? You know, what do I want to maybe play that's a bit outside my normal buy-ins that I would usually be playing and things like that. So I kind of have the luxury of approaching it from the sort of ambitious perspective of, this is my standard stuff, and what do I want to do that's beyond that, and just talking with my backer about that. But from I think the really interesting thing about everything you were saying there is it's never really been the case for me that I look at a tournament as an opportunity cost. Like I never really get FOMO in that way. Mm-hmm. What I do get is this kind of, it's not FOMO about missing the value. It's FOMO about, oh, this tournament would probably be really fun. You know, like I get FOMO about like just a really good event that is going to have, you know, good atmosphere, like high stakes, you know, good field, like good structure. Like if it's a really good event, and I just know that the experience of playing it would be really good, that's what I get FOMO about. So it's kind of, there's always an element of my structuring for the summer where sometimes I'm looking at, I mean, I'm not doing it that much, but sometimes I'm looking at like that event would probably be really fun. Yeah. And I want to make sure I play that because at the very least, I don't want to just grind Venetian 1Ks all summer. And I want to make sure that there's some excitement and some fun there for me as well. So there's a balance for me between maximizing EV, but also the summer is the most fun time of year, and I have a backing deal that gives me that security. So let's focus on what do I want to play and what's going to keep me motivated.
I think that you have a benefit that like my generation largely didn't coming up, which, and for better and for worse, right? But I think you have a very reasonable comprehension as to what your ROI is per event. Mm-hmm. So you're able to manage expectations very easily, which curbs FOMO. Sure. Right? Like you don't get much FOMO when it comes to the 25K 8 max, in spite of the fact that it's a soft 25K, because even if it's as soft as you project, your ROI is like maybe 8 to 10%.
Well, it's funny you say that. I'm fucking playing that shit this year.
Good.
Yeah, let's fucking go, Hunt.
Good. It is soft. But my point being is that like, if you weren't playing it or something comes up where you couldn't sell enough for it or whatever, you're not going to be heartbroken over it.
Right.
Because you don't look at it the way that I looked at it coming up.
You just look at the first place prize.
All I saw was that if I could scrounge up 25K and run hot for 3 days, I could make $2 million. And that is just, there's no other time of year. There's no other time of year where I could do that. There's no other event. Right. Like it's just like, this is a must fucking play.
And I think, you know, what's funny about me particularly and the way that I always view live poker is I think that because I've obviously had some good results live, but I've never had like a tournament that I just luckboxed the shit out of and made a huge score early in my career. I never got into the mindset of looking at tournaments as an opportunity to make a massive amount of money.
Right.
And I never started thinking about what could happen if I run really hot in this tournament. I always just kind of expect it's probably not going to go great. And I have low expectations across the board because I've run bad a lot. And I think that stops the FOMO as well.
I don't think it's just that you run bad. I think that like you know what you've signed up for. You're long term. Like you don't plan on exiting MTTs.
Sure.
You're not looking to pivot. You're not looking to build a bankroll specifically.
I mean, that's definitely part of it too. But I guess the only time I start thinking about like, wow, how great would it be to win this tournament is if I'm already deep in the event.
Right.
You know, like I'm definitely just as vulnerable to anybody as, you know, there's 3 tables left and I'm like, fuck, I might win this shit. You know?
But you're so in tune to, you just know like
the expectation.
You bust.
Every tournament you're probably not going to win.
Right.
So
Exactly.
for me, my expectation, like my framework was so different. It wasn't just the 2 million. It was the opportunity that came with the 2 million. Now I would have the ability to play anything. More specifically, I would have the ability to play high stakes cash, which was going to be my bread and butter. It's like suddenly my bottom line may just triple based off of luck boxing this event, which sounds fucking great because what better way to get my hands on a large sum of money than just to get lucky in a tournament over the course of 3 days, because whoever wins these things gets lucky anyway. Why the fuck not me?
Right. It's not winning. It's not like, oh, winning the 2 million at first place. It's like, no, now I can turn that 2 million into 10.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. Your attitude is, why not me? I'm always like, it's probably not going to be me.
Very British of you.
It is. It's very British. But what that means is that if and when I do win a bracelet or some huge score, I'm going to be really fucking happy about it.
Are you, or are you just going to be like, meh?
No, trust me, I'm going to be
You're
really
probably
fucking
like,
happy
well, it's
about
supposed
it.
to happen eventually.
Especially this year.
Yeah.
Especially this year of all years. If I win a bracelet, I'm going to come up with a really fucking good winner's plate.
Especially that 25K 8 max.
Yeah, man. It would be really nice to just rip off that 25K right now.
Oh man, that one does sound fun. It seems so winnable too. It's like 300 people.
300 people. Like, yeah, exactly.
When you are making the schedule too, you have to like keep in mind, like you said, like you know, you want to have fun and you make sure you have off days, right? You know, because like obviously if you're playing all summer, you don't want to burn yourself out. And there's like if there's something that's gonna be going on one day, then don't have FOMO for that. Like I'm not playing. I'm not playing the first event, the freeze out.
Yeah,
because of Landon's thing. I'm like, I don't want to miss Landon's thing. I'll just add another tournament later on. I think
the big thing is that it's critical if you're doing this with any mindfulness of bankroll management or like financial management in any capacity, whether you're recreational or pro. I think it's just like really, really important to fall in love with the process instead of the potential. And the reason is that like more so now than ever, there's just endless choice. And it seems so like, honestly, one of the easiest things that's made it, or one of the easiest things for me transitioning out of playing tournaments for the summer was not just that I have cash to play, but it's that I'm paralyzed by choice. I don't really know where, like the events where I actually have the highest value, I don't want to play. I don't want to play an 1100 at the win, but that's where my biggest win rate is for sure, right? And I do want to play the 10K 6 max, but I might not even be winning in that field. So it's like, it became very easy to understand myself in that regard, where it's like, okay, the events I want to play, I'm not very confident I even have a win rate in. And the rest of them, I don't really want to play, even though I do have a win rate in them. So I guess I'm just going to go do the thing that I'm best at and keep my expectations relatively high, because that's what motivates me. I think that no matter what you're coming from, professional, amateur, just here to have a good time, whatever the case may be, if you manage the process through which you enter and exit this summer and keep in focus what your expectation is, reasonably so, right? Understanding that, you know, if you have a win rate in 1Ks, that you're earning like $150 on every 1,000 that you pay for, as far as binds go and stuff like that. Like, it makes it so much easier to brick and live with it. It makes it so much more enjoyable than to sun run and put yourself in spots that you otherwise had never planned for. You know, that's my biggest summer ever was 2013, where I had no 5Ks on my schedule at all. I sold a package for 3Ks and under. I happened to final table 2 events first 10 days of the series, getting a 3rd and a 5th for like 200,000. And suddenly I find myself playing the rest of the 5Ks, with like irresponsibly all my own action. And another 4th or 5th place finish in the final 5K for like $200,000.
Yeah.
And it's like that parlay could have never happened if I didn't allow myself to reconfigure once some good fortune fell my way.
Exactly.
Right. And there's a big difference between cashing a few events and, you know, having an 8% ROI up until this point of the series versus like going so deep that you have 2 final tables and like a 3,000% ROI,
Right. Yes.
right? Like now you can take some of that money and fire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. You were talking about the events you enjoy are the ones where you don't have a win rate.
Yeah.
And the events that have a win rate in, you don't find them to be as interesting. I think there's a word for that. I think it's called being a degen. I think when you enjoy the events where you lose and you don't like the ones where you win, I think you're a degen.
Well, I don't win in either, but in theory, I'm winning in one case. Definitely not in.
When was the last time you played a 1K? Would it have
Probably
been the one we got the free seat?
Did you play the mystery bounty last year?
The NAPT,
No.
wouldn't it? NAPT, where you were at my table.
Yeah, was that a 1K or 1,500?
It was a 1,600.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay, yeah.
As far as the series goes, I may have played the 6 max last year, but I don't think so. I think 2 or 3 summers ago, I played higher volume. I want to say I played like 20 events.
You know what you need for this summer is you need someone that you really don't like to win a bracelet in like the first few days.
Nah, it wouldn't do it for me.
Really?
But if somebody like, if I could get somebody to lay action on me winning a bracelet, it would motivate me.
Yeah.
You played the tag team last year.
I played one hand.
Oh, okay.
You quote unquote played.
Yeah,
tag team.
I gave a great experience to my partner.
Yeah.
He got to play. We cashed.
Cashed,
we fucking
yeah.
cashed that thing.
Might as well play the mystery bounty this year.
I don't think, man. Maybe I'll play the
could
10K.
win $1 million.
The
Like
10,
that.
the 10K.
Glance how easy it is.
Yeah, it's super easy. The 10K mystery bounty was a lot of fun. I would play that again. I don't know about the 1K. Maybe we'll see. I have no idea. I have no idea what to expect from cash this summer. It might be totally different. Seats might be.
He's gonna get shut out of all the cash games and just be forced to play tournaments all summer. It's gonna be great.
I hope that happens.
He's gonna win a bracelet.
Selfishly, I hope that happens.
Yeah, and he's just gonna like win he's gonna win like 1.5 million in like.
Fuck me. I
Yeah.
made $700K in cash last summer, but like, you know, let me go fire off $125K in tournament lines that I'm gonna get no return on instead.
The incredible outcome for
double
this
that.
summer is like you get shut out of the cash games, you're forced to play tournaments, and then you bink something for even more money than you would have won otherwise.
Exactly.
So
You're just
fucking hard.
reluctant.
I actually would have to pluck the $1 million mystery bounty.
You just like final table the main
Right.
or something. Like
Yeah.
Sure,
imagine that.
Hey, that's the
Imagine.
dream.
You win the millionaire maker. You win the monster stack. Those are like million.
God, they want me at the final table of the main. I'll tell you that right
You're
fucking
at
now.
least gonna play the main though.
Of course, he always.
Of course, I'll never miss the main. Honestly, though, like I get more and more conscientious of it every single year because I'm like, if I final table the main and they see the shit that I do, like I have no. I mean, it's gonna be tough to justify. Like I'm a studied player and I'm opening 5-3 suited under the gun 1 off of an average stack. Like
Listen, man.
I just can't.
Stop. You're not doing that.
You know,
That's
it's a
what you
balancing
think,
thing
man.
because, like, okay, what the hell is he doing? But you know, also he's here.
Yeah, fuck those guys. I'm gonna be the Adam Walton of 2024. Let's go. Just
Be the guy who gets
yeeting it.
three-handed and then like they're like on the morning of three-handed play they're like, so let's have a chop discussion. You're like, fuck you guys.
I don't think I could be that rich. The payouts are just way too steep. I would be the one conscientious of like, hey guys, you know, we could all walk away.
Take a
right
little
now.
off the table here, guys.
You know, we could all guarantee that we have 6 million and still leave 2 to fucking play for.
And
It
then
seems pretty good.
Knowing your luck, you get three-handed. It's like Chidwick and Kuhn, and they're both like,
Fuck
"No,
you."
we're not chopping with this fish.
Like,
Yeah.
are you serious, buddy? I saw the 5-3.
Right.
We are gonna
Once they
win.
get Berkey out, they'll make
Yeah.
a deal. You know.
It's like, good luck busting us. All right. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what your plans are for the WSOP. Hunt, I think you have a new course that's coming out tomorrow. If you want to give us a quick plug on that one.
I've been working on this for such a long time. I still have to record the last 2 parts of it, which I'm going to be doing tomorrow, but it's called Theory in the Chaos. It's about multi-way. It's just a huge deep dive into multi-way poker where we're looking at 4, 5, 6-handed pots, all these types of spots that come up a ton in low stakes games, tournaments, all sorts of things like that. Just digging deep into how, contrary to what people think, theory very much still does apply in these spots. And there's a bunch of stuff that you can use to break them down. We've used all sorts of very advanced solvers that have only been out for 6 months to do this stuff. So I hope everybody enjoys it. It's been great to make, and I certainly feel like I am probably more educated on multi-way play than almost anyone at this point. So I hope people like it, and I look forward to seeing the feedback.
So that's going to come out tomorrow on solve4y.io. It's a 2-part course. The first 3 lessons are going to be released tomorrow. The second 4 lessons are going to be released, I think, in 2 weeks. We'll probably give you guys some sort of sign-up code tomorrow to get you in there a little bit cheaper if you want to experience this multi-way course that Hunt is putting out. It's going to be great stuff. This is like one of the most applicable things that I could think of when it comes to theory doesn't apply to my game, or even bomb pot type stuff. There's just so much that's going on in the live realm when it comes to handling multi-way, and I can't imagine a course better serving that environment than the one Hunt just put together. So be on the lookout for that one tomorrow. Be sure to tune in tomorrow if you're looking for a promo code to sign up to Solve4Y for a little bit cheaper. And in the meantime, thank you always for the support. We'll be back again tomorrow in the evening slot. I have a seat in Bobby's room, so we're going to be here at 6 p.m. Melissa's going to be joining us again, as always, on Thursdays. Thank you guys always for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.
Peace.